Hi, it's your local dead girl, here to report to you on Tokyo Videos of Horror, also known as Yamiduga. This is created by Kazuto Kodama, and there are many different video segments, but this will be focusing on Tokyo Videos of Horror Volume 3 and 4. Let's begin with Volume 3. The first story is called Mountain Pass at Night. A young man and his friend are driving on the roads at night, having a good time discussing little things and playing with music, when suddenly the friend acts strangely as he pulls over. He gets out of the car and he walks over to squat down in the middle of the road where there seems to be absolutely no one there. He begins talking as if he's having a conversation with another person. Eventually he returns to the car where he opens the back door to let in a strange figure with a half-destroyed face. However, only the friend can see this figure. The young man who was in the car with him cannot see anyone, and the only way this figure can even be seen is through camera footage. Whenever the friend gets into the car in the driver's seat, he tells the young man with him he's taking Lisako home. The young man is freaked out, obviously, and he doesn't want to be involved in this, so he gets out of the car. But his friend drives off without him, very recklessly, really out of character of him. The friend gets into a car wreck shortly later, and when he goes to the hospital, he receives a call from a woman named Lisako, but after the crash, his memory wasn't too great, and he's not really sure who that is, so he rejects the call. The poor young man had to walk home the whole time in the dark of night, and only finds out about the events of this later. This story definitely had a very effective and subtle horror, and there are these very realistic interaction between the two guys, especially with them arguing over music CDs and just having a good time until things really set in, and there's this hint of something very similar to One Missed Call. It really makes you wonder what would have happened if he'd taken the call. That part was really creepy to me. The next story is Red Shadow. These models are doing a screen test for a snack food commercial. One of the models, however, has her face strangely distorted, making her features swirl around and shrink in odd ways. It's not really unsettling. It's a bit silly, and it did make me laugh, but this is one of those situations where it's a very YouTube clip sort of story and not one of the better ones. The next story is Gravure Video. A hired cameraman was filming a young model, trying to make a video of her acting like she's in love with this partner, and she's talking to the camera affectionately as if that's her boyfriend. The first scenes are filmed in this park when he notices she has on a rosary she picked up off the ground. The cameraman insists she removes it afterwards whenever they return to the rented studio, as that did not belong to her, and it would not look very good on the camera for her to be wearing something stolen. The young model's oddly reluctant, acting uncharacteristically of herself, but she did remove it so that she could film her swimsuit shots. However, as she was filming these swimsuit shots, she began to get strange scarring on her body, and it seemed to worsen over time as they continued through these shots. She began to act very erratically, as if she was possessed by something strange, and then she ran away. The cameraman tried to chase her, but couldn't find her, so he came back to the studio. But the model was already there with her back facing him. He turned to her to get a better look at her, and that's whenever he saw her upper face and chest and even her stomach were all covered in these strange burn-like rash marks that seemed truly horrific. They were just completely covering her body, and they looked very painful. The woman, of course, was taken to the hospital, where she did recover days later after the rosary was returned to the owner's family, as the owner had apparently recently died. While this story was definitely a bit tamer, it did have some really gruesome shots and decent acting. I really enjoyed the shot of what happened to her with these weird marks on her. For the most part, this story definitely could have been a little stronger. The next story is called Underground. It follows two cavers exploring a dark cave when a strange face appears. The strange face is relatively unsettling, especially around the eyes. There's not much else to the story, so there's not really much that can be said. There's some fun scenery of this dark cave, but it's a creepy YouTube clip sort of situation once again, as there wasn't much content to the story. And the last story is my favorite of the bunch. It is called The Cursed Box. A director, the director's assistant, and a young model are recording a show together in a creepy abandoned hotel where they will perform the kukuri game, which is very similar to using the Ouija board in Western culture. Exploring the creepy place, they found an upstairs area that was boarded off, and they even removed the boards from a small room to show a small room at the back of it. There inside the room was a strange display of many papers hung from red string, and it was unsettling to look at, so the young model wanted nothing to do with it. She had a very bad feeling, and it creeped her out, and she wanted to film this somewhere else. The director really tried to make her use it as a recording space, but she refused. Eventually, the director gave up and allowed the young model to record using the board to try to summon Kokori-san, and the assistant director was operating the board alongside her. The board moved around, as it generally does in these situations, which often is assumed to be somebody at the table operating it slyly to, scare someone. The board moved around, telling them Kokuri-san had no earthly attachments and wanted them to look in the back room upstairs near the back cabinet. The model, however, was still against the idea of doing what the director was telling her to. She didn't want to go back to that room. It really freaked her out. The director didn't care and kept insisting, so she eventually did give in and returned to that room, where they went inside and she was forced to cut the red string with the scissors. He rushed her as she searched near the back cabinet, eventually finding a strange doll in a box tied with string. This doll was ugly and strange looking, as if it was very old, and it wasn't exactly one of those perfectly made dolls. It was more like one of these fabric dolls that was just showing its age. The model is then rushed into opening the box she found alongside the doll, removing the strings. She freaks out, however, when she finds hair inside of it, just clumps of dark hair. After that, something strange happens. The model and the assistant director both run off screaming, and the director, not sure what else to do, runs off after the assistant director to check on him. But the assistant director acts strangely disoriented. The director heads back inside when the model screams, and he finds her in the cabinet, curled up, and she's choking on the hair inside of the box, and he helps her get it out of her mouth, dragging her out of the room, only to see the doll now wearing a head full of hair, a very stylish wig on her freaky little head. And it's by far the funniest image that has stuck with me since I watched it. She's really just perched there, looking so wonderful with her new hairstyle. Absolutely one of the funniest scenes of the whole thing. Following that is a bunch of chaos, as the assistant director throws himself out the window and crashes into the director. However, as they were all trespassing on the property, none of them chose to seek medical attention. The model and the assistant director are now both medically institutionalized for mental health reasons, and the director decided to abandon directing entirely after that mess. This story had a good balance of unsettlingness and silliness at the same time, and I really liked the use of these occult concepts, especially this Kokuri-san idea. It hit a perfect balance, and I really like how I had a character that hate as much as I did, as the director was such an awful jerk. And there is something to be said about having a character who is so unlikable that you can't even be like, well, there's a reason for this. No, he was acting ridiculous. So that added to the level of frustration, and the director being the one who came out unscathed, even if his career was totally in ruins. And I feel like that also added a level to the story where it left you feeling something about it and thinking about it even after it was over. This was definitely one of the better sections of the Tokyo Videos of Horror volumes, and I really enjoyed it. It was a good deal of fun. Now on to volume 4. This story is called Spare Key. A man is visiting his friend Samagawa's super expensive fancy apartment and taking a tour when they find this cute little love note from his girlfriend Yuki. Uh-oh, his girlfriend's name is actually Yoko. After some weird joking around about Samagawa being a cheater, they make their way into the bedroom, looking out at the balcony, when off to the side behind their heads there's a strange head appearing out from one of the closets. The men do not notice, and they simply head further into the bathroom, where they find this very well shot scene showing a long dead body in the bathtub. The previous tenant Yuki had ended her life in the bathroom of her old apartment with her ex-husband, just to try to annoy him, apparently. She had no idea he didn't live there any longer, thanks to the apartment owners forgetting to change the locks. It's really one of the funniest part of this. This woman is so petty that she chose to do this. and was helped because they forgot to keep their tenants safe by changing the keys. A comedy of errors in a sense. Samagawa decides to stay in the apartment for some weird reason, and because of that, his girlfriend leaves him. She wants to, shower somewhere where someone hadn't just died. It's sensible. After losing his girlfriend, Samagawa remains within the apartment, and he mentally spirals. He loses his job, he loses his apartment, and he never seems to recover. His apartment is found by the interviewer, and he plastered his much less fancy place and these endless pictures of ominous eyes before he's evicted once more. Though it's not quite clear where he even is, as he never shows up. This was definitely a solid story as it began, and then it got progressively sillier. It was a little bit close to Noroi the Curse, as were many other stories, but I feel like it definitely did not hit all the right notes in comparison. The next story is Depressed Face. There's this cute little shrine festival as girls play with flower petals, and there's a weird face in the window. His face looks like it's been swallowed up in this swirling black and red vortex, and then the figure vanishes. Not much can be said for this segment, as it once again resembles what might be found on YouTube. It feels very silly, especially with the subtitles calling this a depressed face. So is this what depression looks like? Or do they mean he comes vacuum sealed for the holidays? I would think the second. Living Together first half is the next story. A young woman named Kaori is worried for her sister Mariko, who seems to be getting scammed by this phony psychic man. She tries to visit Mariko to no success, so she hires detectives to follow them. But eventually the man notices the camera and he ushers Mariko back into her apartment, so there's not much success from that. Kaori decides to visit this time, and this time she demands to be let in when talking to Mariko over the intercom. She threatens a public disturbance to annoy the neighbors and even to report what's happening to the police, which is a really fascinating way to get your sister let you into the house. Imagine if there was nothing supernatural about it and Mariko was just trying to go no contact, right? Mariko finally does relent, and Kaori gets to speak to the man, who stands there in eerie silence even as Kaori relentlessly grills him and attacks his character. The man offers little information, largely remaining silent and being unhelpful. However, Mariko soon after collapses to the ground while strange thunderclaps and flashes of darkness appear, and poor Mariko is curled up in pain and agony on the floor as the strange man hovers his hands over her body. Doing what? Trying to protect her? Or harm her? Nobody knows, really, because the segment ends here, which really kills the momentum, especially since there's been so little that's established. It's creepy, but it's just really badly paced to have separated this into two sections. I have no idea why they chose to do this. The next story, to break it up, is called Hand of Glory. This involves a cameraman filming what seems to be a man exchanging money for adult services from a woman, only to go aggressively in a different direction as the man chokes her out until, well, she dies. The cameraman freaks out the whole time, asking if she's dead. Whoa, what do you think? The answer is pretty obvious. The scene changes to the men carrying the poor woman out to some abandoned building in a blue tarp, where the murderer talks on and on about how she's so sinful and how the most evil part of her body needs to be removed. So he removes the tarp and he cuts off her hand as the poor cameraman freaks out. It's not so great because he fails to properly film the scene because of it. That was most likely so they can put the prop arm in place to cut it off. The murderer now raises what he calls his Hand of Glory into the air, and then he wraps it to purify it. This is really not how the Hand of Glory was done historically. It was usually cut off from hanging criminals in the gallows back in the olden Europe. The scene changes to show the Hand of Glory with this candle made of adipocere. I might have said that wrong, which is some gross stuff from the poor woman he cut the hand off of. Hasn't she suffered enough? He has this fancy black robe as he sets up a fancy ritual circle and lights the candles. The murderer chants for a while before he sacrifices the poor cameraman, since he needs a sinful man, and I suppose by being a part of it, maybe he was. So I guess that's why he kept someone with such shoddy camera work around. So a massive white orb suddenly appears as there's this loud white noise and a lot of camera shaking, and it messes up the murderer really badly as this weird skeletal face can be seen over the glitching camera for just just a brief moment. It was definitely not very well done in terms of research, and the story was a bit badly done as well. It was interesting to watch, definitely, but mostly to get mad at, which doesn't feel like much of an achievement. Okay, so back to living together, the latter half. Mariko is still on the floor in agony where she was last left, with the psychic man hovering over her, so Kaori goes to check the little doorbell camera to see these two shady gray figures waiting outside. She's convinced by the psychic man to take Mariko into the small little bedroom to get away from them, where they are told to wait as he leaves them with these two lit candles. Mariko and Kaori are left alone for some time until some lights flash over the doors, allowing them to see the shadows of those two figures. It turns out the figures are actually their parents, and the parents begin to call out for them, freaking Kaori out so badly she faints. Kaori wakes up later, and she finds out that her sister Mariko is missing. So she grabs the candle and goes to look for her, ignoring the advice of the psychic man, only to stumble upon the corpse-like face of said man. And he seems to have these creepy demonic eyes whenever he opens them. It's honestly quite unsettling and gross, a great makeup job. Kaori is not so pleased as she runs to try to get Mariko in another room, and Mariko lies slumped over and passed out, which... fair enough, girl. Kaori turns away for a moment to look around, and Mariko is gone by the time she turns back. All that's left in her place is this red paper doll in the chair where the psychic man once was. Kaori later calls into the show to say Mariko is still gone, so she decided to go to her apartment and check her old photo albums to see if there's anything there. What she did find, with some surprise, was the psychic man was in all of Mariko's photos, even in her childhood. Her parents tried to save Mariko from this psychic man, but it seems like they couldn't from beyond. And who really knows what's become of Mariko now? Nothing good, at a guess. This story was weirdly complicated, but at the same time there just wasn't enough going on, and being split into two completely trashed the momentum of the story, so it's very awkward and anticlimactic, and it didn't end the volume in the best way. So this volume was not as good by far, but it did have some interesting ideas. Most of them were just not done very well. Overall, the Tokyo Videos of Horror volumes seem to be as up and down as ever, making it a mystery just how good it will be whenever you watch them. It's a bit like junk food for film. I had fun though, and I hope you did as well. Thank you for watching. Bye. Your local dead girl is out.